What I loved about what we're doing with Not For Sale is that we're just finding people who believe in what we do. It's like a tribe. People, you're not convincing anyone. It's that you find the right people or they find you, and you know right away whether it's a fit or not. And those are the people you build family with. And it's, you call it a movement, you call it a social club, but really it's family. And I think Susie's a great example where Susie found us and knew immediately that she was going to fit. She was part of the tribe. And I don't know what your experience was like.
This has been a cause that I've always wanted to be a part of, and I've helped in the past organizations that deal with human trafficking. But this, I basically searched online, and there was a charity event that happened like a week before, and then I was like, you know what, let me just reach out to Not For Sale. 3 days later, I ended up meeting Oliver Trevina, who works for Not For Sale. I was like, I've been trying to reach them. This is what I wanted to do over New Year's. And so then he's like, well, this is crazy. And so then he put me in touch with you. And then next thing I'm like, I'm coming. And you're like, okay. It's like, yeah, all right, yeah, whatever, sure, okay, yeah, see you there. And I was like, no, really, how do I do that? How do I make
totally,
this happen?
when I got that call, I was like, oh, sure, this will be the only time I hear from you. But it was really, and also, like, there's a few obstacles you had to get over, like get a visa in 3 days. Oh, I'm going to New York. Oh, yeah. When you're in New York, you have to take a train. It
was so complicated.
So the fact that you overcame all that because of your desire to come, that told me a lot.
Deep in my heart, I've always felt I wanted to be a part of, helping end this, because it is one of the worst things, in the world, I believe. And so, human trafficking and the things that these human beings go through, no one should ever go through something like this. So
yeah, it's one thing to exploit someone, it's another way to take away their destiny. You're taking away their future.
You take away a part of their soul.
Yeah.
Like, it's soul stealing. So, how do you, first of all, how do you take these, these survivors out of these situations? But it's like, I guess the thing that I'm trying to figure out is how do you start the healing process where, the people on the other end of it, that's what I want to explore, is the people on the other side. How do you stop that from happening? Because where there's no more need, because if there's no need, then you solve the problem. So, how do you fix that problem from within and start teaching and educating, people who decide they want to, think that that's okay and acceptable.
Yeah, I'm really convinced that the future belongs to those who tell the best stories. And when V was talking earlier tonight about these young kids off the streets of Hanoi, they believe a story about themselves. It's a negative story. And they've heard the story, they tell their story, other people reaffirm that story, and so V's trying to have them tell another story and talks about the parts of themselves that are beautiful and good. And so telling stories is the power of creating the future. So the more artists, musicians, actors that get involved, they're experts at telling stories. They know how to tell stories well. And so if we can connect the kind of on-the-ground important work that Blue Dragon does and V does with the storytelling, I think we really have the opportunity to change the future.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of actually the reason why I got into acting, was because of stories like Schindler's List and the stories like Beyond Borders. I was like, that's what I want to do. It's like a great book can make you think about the world just a little bit differently, and so with great storytelling, it's the same sort of thing. And then what you guys are doing with creating these videos, it just makes you see a peek into the lives of what's really happening, and then, you tell a really moving story, and, you start to feel and understand what they're going through, and then that changes everything.
The more that people like you tell a different story, what it means to be an actress who cares about the world, and that's what success is, that changes what a 12-year-old girl thinks about the future, right? It's
so cliche, it's like the journey, but for me it's like all the, achieving whatever that is, whatever your idea of success is, like having awards and everything. Like, my real nightmare would be like winning an Oscar and being completely alone because you have no one to share it with. You have no, whatever, for me, it's really the storytelling. It's like, sure, it's like the ego gets in the way of like, oh, if I had this, and look how great I am, and how much status I have, and that separates you from, you can go do that, but that shouldn't be the end goal. It should be for me, it's the stories that I get to create sometimes, and that I'm producing and writing. It's like you get to actually tell the stories. To me, that's the most fulfilling thing. It's like you get to have your little piece in the world and say something. And so when I get to do movies, or I get to be a part of a storytelling that, I get to have a say, and I get to, express other people's feelings in a really like in a way that's profound to me, then I feel like that's the dream. In the olden times, in the olden days, they would, like Shakespeare would have these plays, and they would be able to tell these stories and shift a social consciousness of like what was really happening in the world and hold up a mirror to the world. And so that's kind of like, you know, like being a part of those kind of stories is my aim, my goal, my mission. So, and then, you know, living it.
Every one of us has a chance to have a pen to write our own story. And what human trafficking is stealing that pen. It's taking away that ability to write your story. Someone else says, I'm going to write it for you. And that this to me is just fundamentally wrong. You know, it's like, so if we can, through our work here in Vietnam or in Thailand or Peru or Romania, is give that pen back to people. These kids can tell their own story and give them the tools. It's not for us to tell them their story. It's just we want to help them tell their story and surround them with the capacity and the love that they can tell their own story. Then we won, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really the thing that keeps inspiring me and motivating me to do what we do.
So your story was what inspired you was when you heard about it happening in your own backyard in your own restaurant. Did you do this kind of stuff before? Were you involved with other charities, or was there something that was just so shocking that you're like, wait a minute, oh my God?
Well, when I was in my early 20s, I started a human rights agency that had people, I recruited people to go live with individuals in Latin America who got death threats from military death squads. And because these military death squads were being funded by the US government, I knew that these military governments wouldn't kill a US citizen. They would kill a Salvadoran, a Nicaraguan, a Guatemalan, but they wouldn't kill a US citizen. So what I did is I started to go down and live with people who got death threats, and I would say, here's my passport. If you kill me, the US Congress is going to get together and decide whether or not to continue their support of this military government. And then I recruit other people to go and do that. So that was a part of it, but then I have like a separate identity in life called a venture capitalist, and then I have a separate identity in life called a professor, and I lived 3 different lives. I didn't like bring them together, but for some reason when I discovered human trafficking in San Francisco in my own backyard in my favorite restaurant, I said, okay, I need to like integrate myself in a way that brings all of that together. Mm-hmm. And so it was a journey for me, because originally I feel like I opened my heart and shut down my brain. Mm-hmm. Because charity means opening your heart. It doesn't require the same kind of skill that business does. I go, wait a second, what if I use the knowledge and the skill and the resources I have for business and I put them towards creating a problem or solving a problem like human trafficking? So it's been a long journey for me to figure out how to bring all of that together.